people think that alcohol makes them more fun or more social. That is a myth. I always say that that is because they haven't tried to actually be in touch with their fun part of themselves and sit down and understand what fun means to them. When we're kids, we just let our imagination flow because go into extracurricular activities and I don't know, playing football, playing tennis, dancing, and doing all these things. And then when we are adults, we have a more serious life where, as you said, now I have to be this person and I have to go to the office and I have to work hard. We stop doing things that we like.
Hello, and welcome to the Hello You Show, where big dreams meet real action. Through transformative stories, a bit of neuroscience, and real conversations, this show is here to help you explore creating your next level life with authenticity and passion. I am Jessica Rice, a design techie and former engineering leader turned vision evolution coach on a mission to help other women rise up and lead a life of purpose. So get cozy and say hello again to the real you. Welcome back to the Hello You Show. My name is Jessica Rice and I am your host. And I am so excited about the guest that we are bringing on today. I know it's going to be very life-changing for you to just have some new ideas that I think you can put into your toolbox and how you move forward on some of your larger goals. Today, we're joined by Sylvia Subirana, who is a clinical psychologist and head of content development at Unconscious Moderation, an innovative app that empowers users to transform their relationship with alcohol and discover greater meaning and fulfillment in their lives. With a master's in clinical psychology and specialized training in grief and sexual therapy, Sylvia integrates tools like hypnotherapy, journaling, and exercises to support lasting change. Sylvia is passionate about holistic well-being and leverages her lifelong dance experience to more deeply understand the mind-body connection. Through Unconscious Moderation, Sylvia inspires individuals to develop healthier coping mechanisms and build supportive communities, guiding them on their journeys of personal growth and self-discovery. Sylvia, I'm so excited to have you joining us. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited too.
So I know that we provide your bio and you have this incredible background, but I just love to hear a little bit more from yourself. What's your journey? What's your story? What brought you here?
So, well, as you said, I'm a clinical psychologist, and nowadays what I do is work for Unconscious Moderation, which is an app that helps people have a healthier relationship with alcohol. And the way that I like seeing and helping people with that is that there's so many things that we can do in life that is by the choices and the patterns that we have. So by changing those patterns or being conscious of those patterns that normally are unconscious, we have so much power and we can change all that. And I realized all this when I stopped drinking around 6 years ago. I don't have a set date because it was quite organic for me. I just understood that it was not working for my body. I had sort of some troubles with my gut. And then I felt at some point, I felt like I kept forcing it. Like I would be surrounded by friends, going to, I don't know, barbecue or plans with friends, and everybody would be having a drink in hand. And because everybody did that, I just did the same. And when I stopped and actually listened to my body and the signs that my body were saying, I understood that I was just following that unconscious pattern of just feeling same like the rest, right? And feeling, that sort of peer pressure. So little by little, I started to understand what my body was telling me and what I actually needed to do for my body to feel healthy. And that's when I stopped drinking and I haven't looked back.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And I think it's really incredible because it sounds like you didn't have to go down the path that I think so many of us go down, which is we really start learning kind of the hard way about different substances and things that we use as a coping mechanism many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I talked to so many people that use alcohol and other substances. It doesn't need to be drugs. It can be sugar, or it can be scrolling on social media, which is way more normalized. That obviously some drugs that are illegal, but many different behaviors and substances that we do or take have that numbing effect that we use as a coping mechanism, and of course that is not healthy. So I think we're in a society that pushes us to do that because we are so stressed. There's so many things going on and we need to take care of so many things that I completely understand. And I have to learn I had to learn with other things as well, because yes, alcohol is out of the picture for me, but I love chocolate. And if I don't keep an eye on that, I eat when I'm stressed, right? I eat chocolate when I'm stressed, and that is not a healthy coping mechanism either. And that's what I had to keep an eye on. So I think it really depends on the person, that they all have that little thing that they look for when they're stressed. For some people, it's a glass of wine or a beer or something like that, and for me, it's chocolate. So we all need to learn a little bit what triggers we have and what behaviors that we seek after those triggers. And well, I always say knowledge is power.
I love that you're bringing all of that into play. And I love the name unconscious moderation, because I think that is really, that's the key I find even with some of my clients in terms of, what are some of the habits that we either need to undo in order to redo other ways forward in our lives. And so the fact that you're bringing up chocolate even is a great example, because I think sometimes, right, we stop paying attention. We stop being mindful in some of the things that we're doing, whether it's chocolate or sweets or wine or whatever that looks like. And I think that it's important that we consider, what are some of those triggers. So your background is in psychology. How are you helping people to kind of bring some greater consciousness to some of the habits that they've created for themselves?
So the way that we work, the team in unconscious moderation, the way that we work is combining unconscious work and conscious work, so people are more aware of their patterns and those triggers. Because as I said before, knowledge is power. So if we just live in automatic and don't question what we do, like we don't question our behaviors, and we don't question anything that we think, and we just do as we think that we should do, then that's when a lot of people have that habit of drinking, for example, when they're stressed or stuff like that. So with the unconscious work, we want to rewire the mind, reprogram the mind little by little, and help people understand that they have more options, that just because they're stressed, they don't need to drink wine to deal with that stress, but they have other options, right? So the unconscious work really just opens the mind to other options. And then we combine it with conscious work, because when people are aware of those patterns, of those behaviors that they're having, then little by little they can actually change them. And I believe that that combination between unconscious work and conscious work is very powerful, because sometimes, even if we want to change something, our willpower can only take us so far. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to actually change a behavior that we've had for years, especially when it comes to substances, right? Like alcohol and other substances. But now we're talking about alcohol. So the body has that tolerance and needs it to function, or at least that's what the body thinks, that the body needs that alcohol to function. So it takes a while to have a new normality, right? And for the body to understand that it actually doesn't need that alcohol to survive. But again, I want to say a disclaimer that the app in our program is focused for people that are gray area drinkers or sober curious, or however they want to call themselves, but not for people that actually have a problematic use of alcohol, because quitting cold turkey for people that actually have that dependency can be dangerous. So if anybody's listening to this podcast and is actually thinking about changing their relationship with alcohol, but they think that they are a bit dependent on it, I would always recommend to check with the GP first.
Mm. Well, I appreciate you mentioning all of that and for the disclaimer as well, because I know that we're dealing with a very kind of a touchy subject, and there are a lot of areas that I think some of us don't fully understand unless we've gone in that field.
Hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about how does the app help to blend kind of this unconscious then with the conscious so that you're kind of touching on some inner wiring that, sometimes can be hard to find.
Yeah, and it can feel scary. A lot of people ask, "How are you doing that? Is it dangerous? Is anything going to happen?" And I always say, "No, don't worry. Everything is safe." The app is it's a program that you do during 90 days, and then the first 30 days is, well, you basically don't drink, right? And those 30 days, you have 30-minute tasks during the day. So it's half of it unconscious and half of it conscious. So the way that we work on the unconscious mind is a 15-minute hypnotherapy audio. So you just put your headphones on and lay down or sit down and have those 15 minutes listening to what the voice is telling you. And it's very similar to a meditation session or a visualization or many other things that loads of people have actually tried. So it doesn't look like the typical hypnosis that we see in movies or in theaters that obviously knock you out and then it's for the show, right? And then you start acting like a chicken or do something like that. And that is not how it works. So basically, you are aware of what's going on all the time. So the hypnotherapy it's very similar to the meditation, as I was saying before. So it brings you to a state of relaxation, and that is quite similar. But then the difference is that when you're in that deep state of relaxation, where you are still aware and you're still conscious of everything that's happening, you are more open to suggestions. So if you're listening to the hypnotherapist that is telling you that there are more options and is little by little rewiring your brain because you consciously want to do that as well, want to do that change and are aligned with that, that is something that your brain is gonna little by little rewire, right? If you are not, if you don't believe in what the suggestions or what the hypnotherapist tells you, then you're not going to do it. For example, if I'm telling you when you're when you're in that state of deep relaxation that you're going to rob a bank and you don't want to do it, then you're not going to do it because you still have power over it. And I think that's what a lot of people are a bit scared of. Someone's going to say something and it's going to be in my brain and I'm going to act on it. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You're only going to act on it if you believe that that is what you want, right? And if you actually do the work consciously and you want to change your habits in regards to alcohol, then the hypnotherapy is going to help you rewire the brain. And that is the first 15 minutes. And then you have the conscious work, another 15 minutes, which is a combination of three things. The first one is journaling, and then you have reading and movement. So the reading is just like 2 or 3 minutes of different information related to alcohol consumption, like for example how it affects sleep or the peer pressure that we feel, or many different things. The movement is also a very short video to move a little bit and stretch a little bit, because sometimes, especially people that work in offices or sitting down all day, they don't move and there's a lot of tension that is stored on the hips. So we focus on doing that, on opening a little bit the hips. So there's this release of tension that will always help with all that. And I left journaling for last because it obviously has the most power when combined with hypnotherapy. So we've actually changed a little bit the hypnotherapy the journaling that we've done it, that we've been offering for our clients, because before it was more general. It was more it would still work. A lot of people were very, very happy about it, but it was very generic, as in we would talk about many different things. We would ask about gratitude, about how to deal with emotions, about relationships. Everything was very broad. However, now we've seen that it would be even more effective if we combined it with the hypnotherapy and made it more targeted to actually that goal of understanding oneself, understanding one's patterns, and why we automatize, for example, when we're stressed, we drink wine or something like that. So now it's more targeted, and then we put you in different scenarios where you can choose different options. Again, there's no right or wrong option. It's just that by doing these things, you're little by little going to understand how you react and your internal patterns. So again, when you make the unconscious conscious and you're aware of it, then you can start actively changing. And by combining these two tools, the conscious work and the unconscious work, it's when we've seen that people see the results the fastest.
Mm. Well, I love that you're combining both of these things in terms of, how you're rewiring the mind, really building on that neuroplasticity, and then helping to create kind of, it sounds like, new associations and connections that we can make in terms of why, a pattern shift, a behavior shift, so that we're conscious about that. Is there a time of day that you tend to recommend that people kind of do these exercises?
That is a very good question, but it's also very personal. It really depends on when people have the time to actually do so. And when I say that it's 30 minutes a day of all these tasks, they can break them down. So, for example, they can do the unconscious work in the morning when they wake up and they're in bed, and then the conscious work when they're, I don't know, free during lunch break or something like that. And they can split it and do it whenever suits them best. I would always recommend doing it when you are alone and you have no distractions. So if that is in the morning, then in the morning, or if that is in the evening after, I don't know, you've put kids into bed, or I don't know, you're alone in the house, or you can actually have your own time, then do it in the evening. I think it's very important to actually could be able to connect with yourself and give you the time and the opportunity to do so. So if you keep being interrupted, it's gonna not be as powerful.
Well, I love these ideas and I love that you can kind of break that up. So it doesn't have to necessarily be all in one sitting, I suppose, which I think is an incredible support. And I can understand why we're building into the mindset of this. And I'm kind of curious too, for everyone who asks these questions, and I know myself, because I mentioned to you that I'm inspired to join the challenge and do, the first 30 days sober, and then how we're going to move forward from there. Is for me personally, and I know that maybe this is true for so many people, which is sometimes it's time bound and it's association kind of bound when we have a habit. How do you address then helping people to kind of break some of those associations? For me, it's, cooking dinner or social gatherings, things of that nature.
That is why hypnotherapy is very powerful, because it actually changes those associations that we have and those connections that we little by little create in our brains, right? Because our brains, as you said before, our brains make those connections between the brain cells. So it optimizes energy, because the brain says, for example, every time that I'm in a social gathering, I have a glass or two or three of wine, right? Or I have a cocktail. Or every time I'm cooking, I want to have a drink with it because that's what I enjoy. So because so the brain associates that, and it creates a very strong path between neurons, between brain cells. So you don't actually have to put much effort, or the brain doesn't need to put much effort into that. So that's why you feel that it's automatic. You don't even see it coming, but you are in a social gathering and out of nowhere, you're craving that glass of wine, right? And that is because of that association and that a strong connection between the brain cells. So what hypnotherapy does is creates alternative paths between the brain cells. So that other path that is so strong right now, and those habits actually lose their power. And there are other options, other opportunities for you to do while doing, like being, as you said, cooking or being with friends and social gatherings. So instead of only having one option, it broadens the mind. It opens a full set of different options that you can actually choose from. So your brain doesn't do that association and you don't end up drinking automatically. And sometimes also for example, in social gatherings, loads of people say that they want to drink, but because they want to feel included or they want to feel like they're part of that gathering. And especially when people, for example, cheer and stuff like that, if you have a glass of water, everyone tells you, oh no, this is very, very unlucky. You cannot do it with water, right? So if you don't have that alcoholic drink, you feel like you're not part of it or you are a bit left out. And that's what a lot of people actually tell me, like, how do I address social gatherings if I actually have the urge to drink because everybody else is doing so? And I think that nowadays it's quite easy because there's so many mocktails out there that give you the opportunity to feel part of the gathering without anybody really asking you what you're having, what you're drinking. So you can have that, I don't know, that virgin margarita and nobody will know that it's actually non-alcoholic. And you can cheer with that and you can be and feel like you're part of the gathering without you actually standing out, right? Because some people that might have a bit more confidence in this change that they're doing in their lives, they don't think that it's necessary to give any explanation and they're happy with, I don't know, drinking a soda, drinking a bit of water or whatever. But some people, and I would say loads of people, actually suffer about that, and that's one of the reasons why loads of people don't actually want to do that change, because of what they're going to feel in social gatherings and when people are going to tell them.
I think that's so true. And I think you're really touching on some of those deeper pieces that, it's one thing to set a goal for ourselves and there's no other influences in our lives. It's another thing when the rest of the world starts coming into place. And I've always noticed that for myself too. As soon as I set a goal for myself, that is usually when, for whatever reason in the universe, then you get that invite, then you get some sort of deterrent that's going to make it harder a little bit, or maybe it just is perceived. So that was going to be my next question to you too, which was, how are mocktails and solutions like that for helping people on this journey? Because on one hand, I could see how it's really helpful. On the other hand, I wonder sometimes, is it just trying to replace something, and are we just furthering, that psychosis, that association?
That's a very good question. And I do think that it really depends on the person and their path and their progress as well. For example, I don't really drink mocktails. I didn't really care of what people thought and all that. And I've always been, I always say that I'm like a plant and I always drink water. But I do see loads of people that actually benefit from having that mocktail, because it really depends on how they're using it. If they're using it to mask something and then eventually they're going to end up drinking when they're feeling stressed or in other moments, then it's actually not very helpful. However, if they're doing it, if they're having that mocktail because they have completely stopped drinking and the only time when they have that urge of drinking is when they are in social gatherings, actually changing that cocktail for that mocktail and not drinking that alcohol, if that suppresses those urges, then it can be very beneficial, because then those people will not be drinking that alcohol and we're not acting on those triggers, and it would only be because they wanted to feel included, or they wanted something like, I don't know, a fancier drink or something like that. So I think it really depends on how people are using the mocktails or alternatives. If they're using it only as a way to hide themselves, but then later on they keep drinking, or they don't really change their habits, then yeah, it might be not very beneficial.
Well, I appreciate you answering that question, because I do see a lot more coming out there. I've tried some myself, and I think that it can be two-sided, especially if you're just trying to find an equivalent to that, and it never quite is quite the equivalent, and maybe just be better off not going down that road at all sometimes. But I'm also curious too about different associations as well. Do you have recommendations? So if there is like a social gathering that, maybe you're worried about feeling like, okay, yes, you're not participating in drinking and that maybe you're going to be a little bit dull or boring. How do you address that? How do you help people think about things maybe a little bit differently? Or are there any tips and tricks?
So the fact that people think that alcohol makes them more fun or more social, that is a myth, because that part of themselves is inside of themselves. It's part of their personalities. However, they are scared, or they are, I don't know, some people are a bit more anxious when talking in public and stuff like that. So um what something that I did when I stopped drinking, and I remember when I was being surrounded by everyone, I was like, okay, how can I be in touch with that part of myself that I had, or that I loved because I had a lot of fun with when we used to get drunk, without actually drinking anything, right? Or just having soda or something like that. And little by little, I started playing. Always said that it was like a game for me, where it was like an experiment where I was like, okay, everyone around me is drunk or is at least tipsy. So I am gonna play the game of being like socially drunk, quote unquote, where I do the trial and error of things that I think that might give me, I don't know, joy or make me feel like I'm having fun. And for example, as you said in my bio, I've always danced. So going to the dance floor with my friends would always be something that would make me happy, and I would be I don't know, I would try and be a bit silly or a bit goofy in different moments, and then see how I would react, what I would feel, and what other people around me would say or would react. And that actually, it took some time. Like, I'm just explaining this as if it was easy, but of course it takes time for you to feel confident to take that part of yourself. But you can try every day, you can try a different thing and get out of your comfort zone a little bit more. And I always said that when you're surrounded by drunk people, it's the best time to try these things, because they're not ones to judge. Like, they're probably going to be doing way more sillier things than you are doing. So you are not standing out and nobody is looking at you. So by doing these little things and trying, then I feel like you get more connected with your personality. And that's something that I learned from my years of not drinking and going out. And I've even been to like parties and weddings, and I was completely sober. And people would think that I was drunk, because I would be connecting with those parts of myself, because with practice, I would be able to get there and be actually having fun. So when people say that they need the alcohol to have fun, I always say that that is because they haven't tried to actually be in touch with their fun part of themselves and sit down and understand what fun means to them. Because when we don't think about it, we always say that fun is what society tells us that is fun. But it's not really how it works, because what might be fun for me might not be fun for you. I've talked to many people, and I've helped many people that have said, oh, for example, as I said before, I love going to the dance floor and having some time there with my friends. But then some people that are in this path and in this path of rewiring their brains when regards to alcohol, they say, oh no, I hate the dance floor. I've always hated it. I've always avoided it. I prefer, I don't know, go to a pub where I can play pool, for example. I just said a random example, but it really depends on what you like doing and how you enjoy spending your time. And that might also put you in a situation where you might consider, okay, this gathering that I'm going to go to, is it worth it for me to go? Am I going to have fun? Am I going to enjoy being surrounded by people that are drunk, but maybe we're not having any sort of the type of fun that I like? So I do think that it's it's obviously trial and error, as I said before, and little by little you understand more about yourself and what you like doing and how you enjoy spending your time, which, as I said before, knowledge is power, and it's going to give you so many insights about how you like spending your time, and not act like time is unlimited, because it obviously isn't.
Mm. Well, I absolutely love that you brought that up, because I was thinking and reflecting even in preparation of this conversation, and we've had several conversations prior to this, which have always been very inspiring. But some of the things that came up for me too was, especially as I moved into my corporate career, was I didn't know how to have fun, or I didn't give myself permission, I would say, to have fun, because everything started to become so serious. I had a job to do. I had to be driven. We had projects, we had deadlines. There were so many things. And so when it came to the weekend or a social gathering, that was my excuse or my opportunity to have a little bit of fun and give myself permission. And what I love about what you've talked about, and I know you've mentioned your tips before to me, which is it inspired me to think about, when we're kids, we don't need any of these things, and we don't need permission to just go and have fun. We just do it. And so that's where I was really inspired in preparation for this conversation too, to embark on what I'm going to call the summer of fun, which is 30 days sober, and then also continuing with the program, and just seeing where it takes me, rather than being like this hard and fast thing. Because I think I've tried things before where, judgment comes in and I start judging myself, and that's always a downward spiral.
Mhm.
But really giving
Yeah.
permission to having more fun, and really thinking about ways to do that. And so what are some ideas that you have in terms of even just replacing like habits? And so I think that there's the mindset piece that you're talking about, hypnotherapy, and other ways to really speak to that internal thought process. Maybe little mantras even that remind us of who we are and what we're here to do. But other things too, that maybe just even in that moment, do you recommend kind of replacing certain habits or activities with something else to just kind of reinforce the behavior?
So I'm actually very happy that you mentioned about the, like, when we're kids, we just let our imagination flow, because something that I see in loads of people, and that I help, and loads of people around me, is that we stop doing things that we like. When we're kids, we go into extracurricular activities, and I don't know, playing football, playing tennis, dancing, and doing all these things. And then when we are adults, we have a more serious life where, as you said, now I have to be this person, and I have to go to the office, and I have to work hard. And we move on to going to the gym, which some people love, but some people don't. Going to the gym, and then that's it, right? We don't connect with our hobbies. So what I actually tell loads of people that are in this journey is, connect with the things that you love doing. Connect with what you love doing as a kid. Maybe it's drawing, maybe it's playing an instrument, maybe it's dancing, like in my case, right? And give you time and give you the opportunity to actually spend time doing that once a week or twice a week. And obviously it depends on how much time you have as a person, but it is very, very important to prioritize yourself, to enjoy that time, and to feel like you're connected to it. Because when we're kids with these hobbies, we learn that they're a very good way to deal with a part of our emotions, where we connect more with that creativity and that part of our imagination, right? And when we become adults and we stop doing that, there's a part of our emotions that we don't really know how to deal with sometimes, because when we were kids, we learned that we would deal with them through our hobbies. So for people that are struggling with these things and want more tools, what the first thing that I always say is, connect with a hobby that you like and that you love doing and you enjoy spending your time doing. Because that actually gives a lot of mental clarity, because without you even realizing, you're processing emotions that maybe are a bit stuck, or you're not giving yourself the opportunity and the space to deal with. So it is so powerful that we don't even think about it. We don't even think of living life a little bit more like when we were kids, right? And connecting with that creativity and that imagination is just the best thing that you can do.
Mm. Yeah, I'm loving this conversation, and I'm actually so excited about this idea, this challenge, and I really encourage and invite anyone who's listening to join me on this, so that together we're finding new ways. To me, it's about really finding an alternative too, and giving myself that permission to not have to be that serious. Sometimes even as a mom, right? Sometimes I think that I start to go down, well, I have to make dinner and I have to do these things and I have to show up in this way. And it starts to feel like this downward kind of slog rather than what are some ways that I can, start to replace some of these feelings with new things that I'm excited about. I was actually playing with my son this last week, who's now 11, but he wanted to do this whole battle, and we haven't played like that in years. I can't even remember last time. So, and it brought back this idea of like, what if we just had fun with our lives? What if we just had fun with all of the things that we're trying to do? And whether it is about cooking dinner, or maybe even giving ourselves permission to not cook dinner and go do something fun, and then, just see what happens.
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of pressure, I think, that we put on ourselves. And speaking
Definitely.
for me personally, that's where I think some of this has, kind of come from, as well as lifestyle. I mean, I know I mentioned to you like where we live, it's a part of our culture very much, is having wine. And I think, this kind of idea of looking forward to something, how much of that do you feel like plays a part in people's kind of overall change in behavior and success?
It does play a huge part when people are more connected with not only with fun, because again, life is about balance and we can always have fun because um we there's difficult moments in life, and it's necessary to embrace those and to give space to all the emotions that these bring. Like we and as I learned a lot about grief, and I trained about in grief, and I helped a lot of people going through that as well. So there are very difficult moments in life as well where we need to take care of ourselves and give space to the emotions that are there. But um what the most important thing is to not get stuck in any of it, right? If you get stuck in the fun part, maybe you're forcing to always be that kind of person, and that might not be healthy either. And then when we go through grief, I help people transit through that grief so they can actually live with that loss, and they can have a good life and enjoy themselves as well. So the most important thing I would say is feeling that connection, that joy that you feel when you feel fulfilled, and things that give us that, being surrounded by our loved ones, feeling like we love people and people love us back, doing the things that we love doing. That's why I mentioned the hobbies before, because when we are doing something that we love doing, we connect with that part of ourselves, and we're not scrolling, we're not drinking alcohol, we're not doing those things that we you do to numb our emotions, but we're actually feeling, and we're in the moment spending time doing something that we love. And if it's with loved ones, even better, because we're combining these two things. So I think the most important thing is to look for that connection and to not put that much pressure on ourselves. I know it's very easy to say and very difficult to do, but little by little, to change that mindset and understand that life is not that serious sometimes.
Mm. So it really sounds like a large piece of the work that you're doing is helping people to truly connect to kind of their higher self in such a way where it's not one thing, it's not another. It's who are you and who do you really want to be in this world? How do you want to show up?
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, without guilt and without judgment. because that is key as well.
Well, and I think that you mentioned, with the idea of going through or processing challenging times too. It's such a pivotal part of our life experiences and how we move through that. It does sound like the app is really helpful and pivotal in the way that that subconscious work is also playing a piece in there. When you're helping people move through grief, how does that show up in terms of unconscious motivation and really moving forward?
So I think that what plays a huge part in countries like, for example, the US, Canada, a lot of countries in Europe, like, we don't rely that much in the cultural part of death, right? And when I talk to people from other countries that death is part of their daily lives and they have loads of rituals, they do parties related to like in funerals, and they embrace death as a normal part of life. They process grief differently, right? And there's many countries that don't even look at death in the eyes. We just live without considering death is an option. So when it happens, we are devastated because it took us completely off guard and nobody taught us what to do with it. So the way that society treats us is, okay, you had this loss. Okay, you can cry for 2 days and then you have to move on. But grief takes time. It takes loads of efforts for you to understand that that person or that thing is not longer in your life. Some things that we grieve, because it's not always people, it can be things as well. And some griefs can be shorter, but then some griefs can take a very long time, and that is completely fine. When people say that they are experiencing grief and they lost, I don't know, a very close loved one a year ago, I always say, of course, that's completely fine. You are not having depression. You are not having any sort of mental health issue. You're just going through grief because nobody has taught us in our countries to deal with the death or the loss of things or people. So again, it really depends on the person how they deal with stuff, but it's very, very important to feel connected with the other people that you have in your life and to work with that, as I was saying before, connecting with joy, connecting with your feeling of contentment, because grief is not linear. You're going to have one day that is really bad, and then the next day you might feel a bit better, but then the day after you might be even worse than the first day. So you just have to have patience and understand that it's part of life.
So beautifully stated. I think you've touched on a nerve there in terms of, how we process it. And there is so much going on in the world right now. And I love that you're thinking about it and you're mentioning it in such a way where there's this community, as opposed to, the way that sometimes we process, which is by ourselves or feeling very alone or like there's something wrong with us. And then we turn to other things to try to cope or mask whatever it is that we're feeling. So if people are interested in reaching out to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So I would always recommend everyone to check our website. There's everything explained, all the program, how it works, the people behind it. There's a lot of information in there. So check our website, that is um.app, so um.app. And there's also a contact form in there that if you have any questions, we receive it. We're a small team, so we address it, and we're happy to solve any questions that people have. And they can also search for the app on Google Play or App Store, Unconscious Moderation. And we're also on Instagram, app, and they will be able to find us.
Well, we'll definitely put everything into the show notes. And I really do encourage, if you're wanting to join me on this journey, please do so. I'm very excited in just seeing how this goes for me. And I'd love for you to come along. And I have a question. So, as a final question, if someone's really, maybe their interest, maybe they are sober curious, maybe they're trying to figure out how to even have greater awareness around some of those subconscious habits, but maybe they're a little bit nervous, what would you say to them?
It's completely normal. It's completely normal to feel nervous. In the end, you're going to do something that you've never tried, and we don't know what you're going to feel, right? Like when we try something new, we have that fear of, what if this happens? What if the other thing happens, right? We don't know what's going to happen, and we are very scared of making changes, even if we know that they're for the better. So I always encourage people to take their time and little by little get out of their comfort zone. And if they do something like our program, it's very easy for them to start doing it without actually feeling the changes straight away, because again, these things take time. It's not a magic pill. They're going to see changes in less than 2 weeks. However, by that time, they will be able to understand a little bit more how the program works. And I always encourage people to just try new things and see if that works for you, because we do believe that this is a very, very powerful tool. So give yourself the chance to change for the better.
Mm. Well, thank you so much. Wise words. I so appreciate you coming on, sharing with us all of the various facets that go into thinking about, what makes us take on new habits. How do we change our lifestyle? How do we think about things differently? It's been a lovely and wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really loved it too.
Thank you so much for joining us today when we have another amazing episode. Thank you for tuning in to the Hello You Show. It's been a pleasure to have you with us on this journey today. If you found value in our conversation and want to support the show, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also deeply appreciate it if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also enables others seeking inspiration and authenticity to discover our community. Until next time, keep embracing your story with purpose.